good morning, and hey now, PASW staff, clients, and friends joining us. Welcome to Monday's class. Hope you guys had a great weekend. I did, so that's good. And yes, I got a haircut, so let's just get that out of the way so you don't have to keep wondering throughout the whole video. But I was safe. So, okay, so Friday we looked at your results for ET, and that was terrific. I'm very proud of the work we're doing. If you're just joining us for the first time, Mondays are the times that I like to choose when I create I take an important film scene in history and either take out the music or add my own sound for you guys to score, and you become the film composer. So we do about a minute clip, and you can go on YouTube or Spotify and find out what you think would fit better or just as good as what the composer originally had in mind. And I embed them, and on Friday we get to watch the results. So anyone can play along. There's no right or wrong answers. We're all friends here. It's a safe, fun environment. So play along, and that it's fun. All right, so let's get right to work here. So like I said, with E.T., Spielberg's film. Okay, the day before that, we did our LA history class with the Forum in Inglewood. So as I like to do, let's go from Inglewood to Brooklyn, and this is where the movie and the scene we're going to be talking about. And we're going to go to 1971. And the film we're going to look at is a very famous scene from the Academy Award-winning film, The French Connection. French Connection comes out in 1971. So what's going on in the world in 1971? Well, technology-wise, the first email is sent, yes, by Roy Tomlinson, and he sends it to himself. And this is because microprocessors are being invented where they can store data. It's kind of like the brain in a computer. Okay, first email, so huge technological advance. History, more than about 60% of Americans are against the Vietnam War. So the war obviously is still going on, but for the most part, most of the country is against it. Okay, Ed Sullivan, last show in 1971. This represents the end of kind of a innocent era in television. He was a conservative host in the sense that, if you went on, you had to pretty much play by the rules. Any deviation, and he would get very upset. And it was one of the probably the most famous family performing shows on TV. So that's the end of kind of a safe era, naive in some sense too. Jim Morrison of the Doors dies in 1971. So we're getting rock and roll still developing. We're getting new technology with computers, and computers are of course going to change how we film movies, how we create soundtracks. We get history. The people are rebelling still. They're upset with the government and the war going on in the world. So things are happening. So the French Connection, 1971 action thriller. Directed by William Friedkin, and Friedkin's most famous probably for this movie, but also for The Exorcist, which is considered maybe the scariest movie of all time. And he is part of a movement just right before Spielberg. He's older than Spielberg, and he's part of this new Hollywood movement. And this is a movement that kind of in the late 60s, early 70s, when directors, all of a sudden, studios were involved for, since the beginning of cinema for the most part, 20s, 30s, 40s, moguls, all these things. Well, in the late 60s, early 70s, directors become the dictator in a sense. So a lot of power is given to directors instead of studio chiefs. This is a huge change, a huge sea change in Hollywood. So Friedkin is one of these directors that gets autonomy in how he shoots and makes the movie. And so along with other movies being made around these times, Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate, Night of the Living Dead, The Wild Bunch, Easy Rider, these are all before the first blockbuster, which is Jaws, right, which we talked about in 1975. These movies all precede Jaws, and they are kind of more personal, independent, documentary-like in some ways films. So this is where William Friedkin is right now in making The French Connection. And French Connection gets Best Picture, Best Actor, Gene Hackman. Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Adapted Screenplay. It's such a fun packed film. If you want to watch it, I thought it was going to be boring, and I ended up really loving it. So, okay, so and the scene we'll talk about the scene we're going to be doing in a little bit. And the composer for the film is Don Ellis, and the score is kind of 70s jazz funk. Don Ellis was a trumpet player, and but studied composition and got his degree in composition from Boston University. So the scene we're going to be scoring today is the very famous car chase scene. Now, it's really not a car chase in the sense that there's just a car chasing a train. So it's not more than one car being chased. It's one car chasing a train that's above. And again, if you haven't seen the movie, you probably have seen clips of this, and it's been parodied a lot. And it's one of the most incredible action scenes before CGI. And if you remember, we also looked at Ben-Hur, the famous chariot racing scene, and we scored that as well. And that was 1959, which, yes, John's right. I do go back to that year all the time. I don't know what it is about 59. I won't say all the things that happened again. Don't worry. We'll move on. We won't get sidetracked. But with Ben-Hur, there was no CGI. That was complete action. There was stuntmen. It was so realistic looking. So from 59 to 71, Friedkin films this car chase that's really dangerous. I mean, it looks as dangerous. Having read about it, it really was as dangerous as it looks. They had no permits. The NYPD blocked off, a few streets with control, but there were some cars that didn't know that they were filming, and they just wandered out on the scene. All these things were kept in the movie to make it look realistic, which it was. If we look at that cool camera angle, so Friedkin and the DP, Friedkin's filming in the back seat. Okay, so that's him holding the camera. But if the camera angle is interesting, kind of a documentary feel, and it's set on that kind of lower the front bumper, and they filmed it at a different speed to make it look like it was going faster in the editing room, or in the final product rather. Friedkin talks about part of the success of it is also Gene Hackman's acting, and we talk about acting. You talk about it with David and Diana, and he's such a good actor. If you had a poor actor looking kind of fake scared, it would really throw off the whole. I mean, maybe the scene wouldn't even work, especially without the sound. But especially Gene Hackman, I mean, one of the best actors ever. Without that expression, he really puts the viewer in the moment of this suspense, this horrible thing happening. I mean, it's terrifying. So he's going after this train above him, obviously, because there's a drug smuggler that he's got to beat out and get to before. And he tried to get on the train behind him, but he needed to outrun the train. So this is him outrunning it in this crazy fashion. So let's watch the minute scene. It's a 5-minute car chase, but we'll just score a minute. There's no score, right? And again, with Ben-Hur, remember Miklos Rozsa decided not to use music in that chariot race scene, although he used music everywhere else. Interesting choice, right? Sometimes no score can be more effective, or just as effective. It's not laziness on the part of the composer. So no score, all sounds, right? that makes it realistic and documentary feel like, I mean, it really puts you in the moment. Sometimes music can put you more in the moment. Sometimes no music can even make it more raw and in the moment. So think about what music might fit for this. Obviously, maybe an action score. Any action score would work. But if you like to think outside the box like I do sometimes, where I put stuff that I don't think works, but it's interesting for us to look at and talk about, that's okay too. Again, there's no right or wrong answers. I was reading that Friedkin was listening to Santana's cover of the Fleetwood Mac song "Black Magic Woman" as he was filming this scene, and it helped him kind of shape the editing of this car scene. Many times directors will choose music that they don't end up using, of course, with either rights or they don't think it really fits. But in the making of it, they'll have a soundtrack in their head or a Walkman or it's something over and over to get the pacing and I know when I do the PASW video, edits for our trailers and all that stuff, I always tell John that I always need to select music usually before, and that the music sets the pace of how I get all of our clips together from the shows and from the classes. It's very important for me, at least, and probably for Friedkin, because he did use a soundtrack in his head for this, to just, we work in rhythms. We're rhythmic people, even if we don't hear how you walk and how you do this, what I'm doing here. There's a repetitive rhythm that's soothing to us, whether we know it or not. Just like when we tap our feet, our foot, we don't really say, okay, now I should tap my foot right now. We just do it. So there's rhythm in our body. So Friedkin was listening to that. Now, I don't know why he decided not to have music here. Maybe you can tell me. So, okay, I'm very excited. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. So I have to get to work too. All right. So send this to me by Wednesday so we can see it on Friday. And have a great rest of the day, and see you tomorrow.